I remember the first time I mailed her an alimony check. It was a cold January morning, 3 weeks after our divorce was finalized. I sealed the envelope with shaking hands, wrote Elena Morris on the front, and dropped it in the mailbox without looking back. That was nearly 3 years ago. 3 years of $1,700 a month. 3 years of believing I was doing the right thing. 3 years of never missing a payment, even when it meant skipping vacations or tightening up my own budget. Because she said she was rebuilding her life. Because she said she wasn't ready to go back to work. Because I still carried guilt. My name's Daniel Morris. I'm 43 years old, a mechanical systems engineer based in Minneapolis. I'm the kind of guy who double-checks seatbelts, over-prepares for presentations, and says yes ma'am to servers. The kind of guy who follows the rules. And until recently, I was also the kind of guy who trusted that my ex-wife was being honest even after the papers were signed. We were married for 9 years. It wasn't always bad. In fact, the first few years were incredible. Elena had a way of lighting up every room she walked into. She worked as a freelance graphic designer back then, flexible hours, lots of creative energy. I was just starting out in my career. We built a life together, or at least I thought we did. But things started to shift around year 5. She grew more distant, spent more time at retreats traveling alone or going on digital detox weekends with people I'd never met. I chalked it up to stress creative burnout. I told myself it was a phase. It wasn't. One Thursday evening, just after I'd come home from a 3-day conference, she sat me down at the kitchen table, no tears, no yelling, and said, "I don't love you anymore. I haven't for a long time." I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just nodded. I moved out 3 weeks later. We agreed on a no-fault divorce. Minnesota law doesn't require blame, just paperwork. We split the assets evenly. I kept the house. She got the Subaru, most of the furniture, and half my 401k. The one sticking point was support. She argued that since she'd sacrificed her full-time career to support mine, she deserved alimony while she figured things out. I didn't love it, but I didn't argue. I still felt like I owed her something. That's how guilt works. It talks louder than logic. For the first year after the divorce, I barely heard from her. Just the occasional email, receive payment, thank you. Short, cold, professional. Then nothing for months. I assumed she was doing better. Maybe she'd gone back to freelancing. Maybe she'd moved in with family. Maybe she'd even started dating again. I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't want to. Until one night, that all changed. It was a Friday in early spring. I was at a friend's housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just beers and burgers in a backyard. Around 9 p.m., my buddy Kyle pulled me aside. "Hey man," he said, frowning. "Random question. You still paying alimony to Elena?" I blinked. Yeah, why?" He pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. "Then, you're gonna want to see this." It was a photo. Elena, in a white dress, veil, holding hands with a tall guy in a gray tuxedo under a wooden wedding arch. They were on a beach, smiling like their lives had just begun. I stared at the screen for a long time. Kyle was quiet, then said, "It was posted by some wedding planner out of Colorado. I only saw it because my sister tagged me. She follows like every wedding account on earth." I felt my pulse in my neck. My stomach dropped. "Are you sure that's recent?" I asked. He scrolled. Posted 2 days ago. Caption says, "Congratulations to Elena and Jeremy. What a stunning weekend in Telluride." Jeremy. I didn't know a Jeremy, but I knew one thing. Minnesota law clearly states that alimony ends automatically upon the supported spouse's remarriage. There was no gray area, technically, if she got married, she was required to notify the court. She didn't. And worse, she'd been married for months. Because as I looked closer, I noticed something else. The photos weren't from the wedding. They were part of a 1-year anniversary reel. The planner had posted throwback content to show off her past events. My ex-wife had been married to another man for nearly a year, and still cashing my checks. I didn't say anything at the party. I didn't rant. I didn't call her. I just went home, pulled up my bank records, and counted. 12 months, 12 checks, over $20,000 paid after she'd remarried. And the moment that realization landed, something inside me shifted. The guilt gone. The silence over. Because if Elena thought she could build a new life off a lie, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Looking back, I think I fell in love with Elena because she made the world feel bigger. I was 28 when I met her, fresh off a cross-state move, recently promoted, and living in a 2-bedroom apartment that still smelled like cardboard and takeout. I'd spent most of my 20s focused on my career, internship certification exams, late nights, drafting HVAC system layouts, and rechecking pipeline tolerances. I was methodical, focused, maybe a little lonely. Then Elena walked into my life like she'd kicked the door down with sunlight behind her. We met at an open mic night. Not my scene at all. I'd only gone because my coworker was performing slam poetry and guilt-tripped me into coming. Elena read a piece she'd written about running barefoot in the rain at midnight in Lisbon, Portugal. I still remember her closing line, "Sometimes we chase storms just to prove we can outrun them." Everyone clapped. I just stared. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she carried this gravity, like she belonged in every place she entered. Afterward, I found her by the makeshift bar. "Lisbon, huh?" I said. "Did you really run barefoot?" She looked at me, cocked an eyebrow, and said, "You're an engineer, aren't you?" "Guilty. Thought so. You look like a man who asks, 'Are you sure that's safe?' during fireworks." I laughed. She smiled. The rest unfolded like a movie. We were married 14 months later, fast by most standards, but it felt right. She moved into my condo. We hosted dinner parties, took weekend trips, merged Spotify playlists. I remember thinking, this is what it means to build a life. She freelanced from home, mostly branding and web design for boutique clients. She didn't make a ton, but she made enough. I handled the bills, she handled the kitchen. I worked 60-hour weeks, and she always made sure there was something warm waiting when I came home. We were happy, until we weren't. It didn't happen overnight. It never does. The first sign was her schedule. At first, she worked during the day while I was out. Then she started working late at night instead. She said her creativity was nocturnal. I didn't mind, but soon the nights blurred into mornings and she started sleeping through our weekends or canceling plans last minute because a client emergency came up. Next came the silence. We used to talk about everything, projects, people, politics, even what-ifs about kids. Slowly, those conversations shrank. I'd come home and ask how her day was, and she'd say, "Same old," without looking up from her phone. I figured it was a phase. Everyone goes through lulls, right? So I leaned in harder at work, picked up overtime, tried to impress the new senior partners. I thought I was protecting us. I didn't realize I was disappearing. The real fracture came in year 7. That's when Elena started going on creative retreats. She said they helped her recharge cabins in Wisconsin, co-working getaways in Portland, a 2-week minimalist workshop in Sedona. At first I encouraged it. She always came back energized, but then the trips got longer and vaguer. She stopped giving me itineraries, just said, "I need space." One time I asked if I could tag along for the first weekend. She gave me this look, a mix of confusion and irritation, and said, "It's not a vacation, Dan. It's work." That's when I started feeling it. That dull ache behind the ribs. The one that says something's wrong but hasn't become sharp enough to name. Then came the conference in Chicago. It was a big opportunity for me. 3 days of workshops, networking panels. I left Elena with a kiss and a note on the fridge. "Be back Sunday. Let's do dinner." When I got home, the house was dark. No dinner. No Elena. She got back the next morning. Said she lost track of time. No apology, no explanation. Just dropped her bag, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted coffee. I said nothing, not because I wasn't angry, but because I didn't know what I was allowed to be angry about. The final blow came 2 years later, a rainy Thursday in November. She was already home when I got there, sitting on the couch with her laptop closed, staring at the window like she was waiting for something. I asked if everything was okay. She looked at me with a strange calm and said, "I don't think I want to be married anymore." That was it. No tears, no yelling, no affair confession, just done. I remember asking, "Is there someone else?" She shrugged. "I don't think that matters anymore. We talked logistics. Who keeps what?" She didn't want the house, said it had too many walls. I didn't ask what that meant. The lawyer said we were one of the easiest divorces he'd ever processed. We were amicable. I mailed her first alimony check 4 weeks later. That first year, post-divorce, was a strange kind of quiet. I threw myself into work, took on certifications, ran long distance, said yes to every invite. I pretended I was free, but I still tracked the payments. Won $700 a month, every month. I didn't mind. Not really. She said she needed time, that she was still adjusting. I told myself I understood, but the truth is I was still trying to earn her approval even after she left. Still trying to be the man who didn't disappoint her. Still carrying a guilt that didn't belong to me. Until that night at Kyle's party. Until I saw the wedding photos. That's when I realized something. I wasn't paying alimony. I was paying for a fantasy. A fiction where she was still single, still figuring things out, still entitled to the support of the man she no longer loved. That was over now. And the next chapter, it wasn't going to be quiet. After that night at Kyle's party, after seeing Elena in a wedding dress with a man I'd never heard of, my mind started running backward, scanning every email, every payment confirmation, every casual moment I'd brushed off for years. There had been signs. I just didn't want to see them. The first was subtle, the way she stopped responding to emails with words. Around a year after the divorce, Elena went from replying with thanks payment received to simply sending thumbs up emojis or short, cold messages. No warmth, no acknowledgement. It was like I'd become a monthly transaction, a deposit, not a person. And I let it slide. I told myself it was better this way, cleaner, no emotional mess. But now I saw it for what it was, distance, concealment. The beginning of a new life she hadn't told me about. Then came the Instagram disappearance. Elena had always been a social media person. She used to post everything, latte art, sunsets, motivational quotes in cursive font. But about 18 months after the divorce, she vanished. No more posts, no stories, no tags. I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I knew why. She wasn't detoxing. She was hiding. She didn't want her new life to be seen by the old one, especially not by the guy still footing part of her bills. Then there were the deposits themselves. I use a tracking spreadsheet for all my finances. Every alimony payment was logged, date, amount, confirmation number. I even made notes if a payment was returned delayed or if she changed banking details. That happened once about a year ago. She emailed me saying, "I've closed that account. Please use this new one going forward." No explanation. At the time, I didn't think twice. People change banks all the time. But looking back, that switch happened 1 month after her wedding date. She was funneling the alimony into a new account, one her new husband probably didn't have access to. Or maybe he did. Maybe it was a joint decision. Maybe he knew I was still paying for the woman he'd married. The idea made my skin crawl. I spent the rest of that weekend digging. I found the wedding planner's page, scrolled through every tagged post, saw Elena laughing with bridesmaids I didn't recognize. There was a caption on one photo that made my stomach flip. Such a beautiful weekend with Elena and Jeremy, a long-awaited celebration of their love. Long-awaited, I clicked on a link to the couple's wedding website. It had been taken down, but Google's cache showed enough to confirm the truth. They'd gotten legally married in Telluride a year and 4 months ago. The ceremony I saw was just a party. A vow renewal, they called it, but the legal marriage that had happened in a courthouse tucked away in a mountain town 15 months ago. While I was still writing checks, I couldn't decide what hurt more, the betrayal or how well she'd hidden it. But what made it worse was what I found next. I went back through our email chain digging for details. The last time she'd directly mentioned needing support was nearly 2 years ago. She had emailed, "I'm still not in a place to go back to full-time work. Things are tight." No specifics, no timeline, just tight. I checked her LinkedIn. Private. I searched her name plus graphic design and freelance on Google. Nothing. No website. No business profile. No portfolio. She had vanished from the professional world. Or maybe more accurately, she never had to return because I was paying her to stay idle. That Monday, I took the day off work. I told my boss I had a family emergency, which was true in a way. I spent the entire morning researching marriage laws in both Minnesota and Colorado. I needed clarity, proof. Here's what I found. In Minnesota, court-ordered spousal maintenance alimony ends automatically upon the supported party's remarriage. No court petition is required. No judge needs to sign anything. The obligation ceases the moment the new marriage license is signed. In Colorado, marriage records are public unless sealed, which hers weren't. It didn't matter that I hadn't been notified. It didn't matter that she never filed anything to update the court. She remarried. That was all the law needed. I called my lawyer, the same man who had handled our divorce. "James," I said, "I need to know how fast we can move on this." He listened quietly as I explained. Then he asked, "Do you have proof I have photos?" A cached wedding site and a copy of her marriage record from the county clerk's office in Colorado. There was a pause. Then, "Let's get to work." That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Elena. She didn't pick up at first, so I texted, "We need to talk. Please call when you can, it's important." She replied 15 minutes later. Her tone was cheery. "Hey, wow, didn't expect to hear from you. Everything okay?" I almost laughed. "Elena," I said, "I know about the wedding." Silence. Then, "What wedding? Don't do that." Another pause. Then she sighed. "It's not what you think. I think you got married last year and never told the court while still collecting over $20,000 in alimony from me." More silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard since our marriage, sharp, defensive, rehearsed. "You don't understand how this works. I didn't intentionally break any law. I thought the court would notify you, or that it had to be filed separately. I'm not a lawyer, Dan." "No, but you're not stupid either." Her voice cracked then. "Are you going to try and take it all back?" "I'm not trying, Elena." "I am. You're really going to drag me through this? You already dragged me through it for 15 months. Click. She hung up. I sat in silence for a long time after that. The blinds in my office were half open and sunlight was pooling onto the carpet. My coffee had gone cold. My stomach was tight. I should have felt triumphant, but what I really felt was stupid. Not because I was wrong, but because I'd let it go on this long. Because I believed that just because a person once loved you, they wouldn't ever lie to you. But love doesn't prevent lies. It just makes them easier to sell, especially when they're packaged as "I still need your help." I wasn't helping. I was being played. Not anymore. That night, I made a list. Every check I'd written, every payment confirmation number, every message from her that could be used to prove she continued accepting funds, knowing she was remarried. I pulled bank records, copies of cashed checks, email timestamps, message logs. I labeled a folder, Elena, alimony fraud. It wasn't personal. It was evidence. And in the eyes of the court, that's all that mattered. After the phone call ended, I sat at my desk for a while, staring at my screen, hands clenched, jaw tight. I didn't want revenge. I wanted respect. And more than anything, I wanted the truth on paper. Because if there's one thing I've learned in both engineering and divorce, it's that paperwork wins every argument. That night, I reopened the folder I'd labeled Elena, alimony fraud, and started compiling everything I had. I didn't want emotion. I wanted evidence. The first file I opened was a PDF of our Divorce Settlement Section 7, Clause 3, explicitly stating that my obligation to provide spousal maintenance shall terminate upon the remarriage of the recipient party. Her signature was on the page. Dated. Stamped. Then I added the marriage record I'd pulled from the San Miguel County Clerk in Colorado, filed 16 months ago, with both her and her new husband's names, Jeremy Callahan. Ceremony date. Filing date. Witnesses, clear as daylight. Next came the payment history. My bank had a detailed download of every transaction. I marked all 16 post-marriage payments, $1,700 each, totaling $27,200. But that wasn't enough. I needed to prove she knew what she was doing, that she deliberately concealed the marriage and continued accepting money she wasn't entitled to. So I opened our message history. She'd never told me she remarried. That was the point. But what I did find were 8 different monthly confirmations. Thanks, got it. Or payment received. One message even read, "Appreciate you continuing support while I get back on my feet." Back on her feet. She was on her honeymoon when she wrote that. Now I had a timeline. I had financials. I had her own words. The only thing missing was a strategy. So I called James, my attorney. He picked up on the second ring. "Dan, I've got the file." He sighed. "Tell me everything." I gave him the full rundown, the marriage certificate, the payment trail, the texts. He didn't interrupt, didn't react, just took notes, asked follow-ups, and muttered, a lot. When I finished, he exhaled like a man who just walked out of a burning building. "Well, she's in trouble," he said. "Good. We'll file a motion to terminate alimony retroactively to the date of her remarriage. We'll also file for repayment of all funds provided under false pretenses and criminal charges." He paused. "That depends. On what? On whether she fights this or cooperates." Spoiler, she didn't cooperate. The following week, we filed 2 motions. Motion to terminate spousal maintenance, retroactively based on remarriage per statute, MN 5118.552 Subdivision 4. Motion to recoup wrongfully paid funds citing unjust enrichment and fraud by omission. James told me it could take weeks, maybe months, depending on how Elena and her counsel responded. But she responded quickly. Too quickly. 3 days after filing, James called me. "You're not going to believe this." "What?" "She filed a motion to increase alimony." I blinked. She's claiming you've had significant income growth and that she's still dependent on your support. She's married. She's claiming she was unaware that remarriage ended the alimony automatically and says she's entitled to continue support until the court says otherwise. I sat back in my chair, stunned. "She's not fighting with facts," I said. "She's throwing paper." "Exactly." I gritted my teeth. "Then let's bury her in receipts." We prepared a response that was 25 pages long. It included screenshots of her public wedding photos, a cached copy of her wedding website, the marriage certificate, our divorce decree, bank records showing every payment post-marriage, email and text records confirming her acknowledgement of ongoing payments, a screenshot of her Venmo payment from a week after the wedding that read, "Thanks for brunch, hubby." Yeah, I kept that one too. James attached a supplemental affidavit stating that Ms. Callahan knowingly and willfully misrepresented her marital status to continue receiving payments in violation of both the divorce decree and Minnesota statute. I signed it with my full name, Daniel E. Morris. No middle initial, no flair, just facts. We submitted the packet. Then we waited. Meanwhile, Elena started calling. She didn't leave voicemails. She just rang. 3 times one day, twice the next. Then came the email. "This is getting out of hand, Dan. We can work this out like adults. You know I needed the support. It's not like I was trying to screw you over. Don't make this uglier than it has to be." I didn't reply, because nothing screams I'm guilty like asking the person you defrauded to make it all disappear quietly. James said not to respond, not even to say, "Got it." "She's baiting you," he said. "Let the court speak now." But I wasn't done digging. I went looking into her new husband, Jeremy Callahan. He was a yoga instructor turned life design coach with a website full of sunsets, shirtless meditations, and slogans like, "Success is an inner vibration." Turns out he had recently started a side business, a couples retreat brand. And guess who was listed as his co-founder and creative director, Elena? There were photos of them together guiding workshops, brochures, business registrations. I found an LLC in both their names. She wasn't struggling. She was building a business with her new husband, all while collecting alimony from her ex. I added that to the file. The hearing was set for 6 weeks later. James told me to be prepared for anything, that sometimes judges side with fairness over technicality, but he added, "Your case is clean, documented, precise, and judges like precision." I took the day off work, put on a suit, brought 3 copies of every document. Elena arrived 15 minutes late. She wore a white blouse, no makeup, hair tied loosely, like she just came from yoga class. She didn't look at me, not once. Her lawyer did all the talking. They tried to argue lack of malicious intent, that she misunderstood the terms, and that it's unreasonable to expect a layperson to know the automatic legal impact of remarriage. The judge cut him off. "Ms. Callahan," he said, looking over his glasses, "are you telling this court that you remarried in another state and accepted $27,200 in support after that and did not think to notify the court?" Elena stood, quiet, hands clasped. "Yes, Your Honor, I didn't understand how it worked." "And you received every payment?" "Yes." "And spent those funds?" She hesitated. "Yes." He nodded, made a note, then turned to our side. "Mr. Morris, anything further to add?" James stood. "Only that all supporting documentation has been submitted and verified. We are seeking full repayment plus legal fees." The judge tapped his pen on the desk for a few seconds, then said the words, "I'll never forget." Motion granted in full. Alimony is hereby terminated retroactive to Ms. Callahan's date of remarriage. Mr. Morris is entitled to repayment of all funds dispersed thereafter. Case closed. Bang. Done. No drama, no shouting, just the sound of accountability landing like a gavel. Outside the courthouse, Elena finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, not with tears, with disbelief. "You actually did it," she said. I met her gaze. "You're damn right I did." Then I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't her paycheck anymore. I was her problem, and that problem had just been solved by the only thing she couldn't lie her way through proof. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought naively that once the judge handed down the ruling, Elena would cut her losses and fade quietly into the background of my life where she belonged. But Elena never could stand losing. Not in an argument, not in a game, and definitely not in court. 3 days after the hearing, I received a certified letter at my home. The envelope had that thick, official feel, the kind that smells like ink stress and future headaches. Inside was a motion from her attorney. Motion to reconsider and restructure settlement. She was appealing the ruling, not just that she was now claiming emotional damages due to the humiliation and reputational harm caused by my unreasonable pursuit of repayment. That's right. The woman who hid a marriage for over a year and collected alimony while honeymooning in the Rockies was now claiming I had hurt her. I called James right away. "Are we really doing this?" I asked. He sighed. "We are. But don't panic. It's a stall tactic, and frankly a desperate one. Can she win not with what we've got?" I wanted to believe him, but I'd been through enough to know that desperation makes people unpredictable and messy. And messy was exactly where she was headed. Elena started her own PR campaign, subtle but deliberate. It began with a series of vague posts on Facebook from a private account we still had mutual friends on. Some people will try to punish your growth when they can't control your freedom. Healing doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it looks like standing up for yourself. Then came a blog post on her new business website, Co-Run, with her husband titled "When the Past Won't Let Go, My Story of Healing Through Harassment." In it, she told a heavily sanitized version of events. According to her, she'd simply misunderstood the law had never intentionally misled anyone and was now being financially attacked by a man who refuses to let go of control. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Mutual friends reached out. Former colleagues. Even one of her cousins. "Hey, is this about you?" one text read. My reply was simple. I'll let the court record speak louder than blog posts. But the real escalation came 2 weeks later. I was in a morning meeting when my phone buzzed with a PayPal alert. "Elena Callahan has refunded you $2,000. That was strange. Then came another one that $700 refunded. She was returning the alimony, but not all of it. Just enough to look good if the appeal made it to review. James confirmed it the next day. She's gonna claim she's already making it right. It's a trap to frame you as excessive and unforgiving. Do we stop her? No. We document. Let her dig. So we did. We tracked every refund, every delay, every carefully worded excuse she emailed my attorney about why the full repayment would take time. She was playing a PR game. I was building a ledger. Then came the mediation hearing. It wasn't in court. It was in a gray carpeted room with a hired mediator, a whiteboard, and 2 carafes of lukewarm coffee. Elena sat across the table from me for the first time since our divorce. She looked thinner, paler, tired, but still holding that same defiant jawline she always used when she was pretending not to care. Her attorney opened with this: "We believe that both parties have suffered due to the confusion around the alimony clause. Elena is willing to repay a portion of the funds as a gesture of good faith, provided Mr. Morris agrees not to pursue further action." My lawyer leaned forward. "Let me be clear. There is no confusion. Your client entered into a new marriage, continued accepting alimony, and made no effort to inform the court. She violated the decree and the law. This is not a negotiation. This is accountability." The mediator looked at Elena. "Would you like to respond?" Elena crossed her arms. "I've already given back part of it. What more do you want?" I looked at her for a long time. Then I spoke. "I want what you took, and I want the record to show you took it." Silence. The mediator paused, then scribbled something down. Elena's lawyer leaned over, whispered something. She looked at me again. "Is this really about the money?" she asked. "No," I said. "It's about the lie." 3 weeks later, the judge denied her appeal, cited fraud, cited clear understanding of the law, cited the timing of her refund attempts as proof of manipulation, not remorse. She was ordered to pay the full $2,700 plus $3,000 in legal fees and submit a signed affidavit acknowledging the remarriage and repayment. She fought it for another month, filed extensions, missed one payment, tried to negotiate in installments, but eventually she paid, not because she wanted to, because she had no other choice. The last message I ever got from her came on a rainy Tuesday in September. It read, "I hope you're happy. You got your money, but you'll always be bitter. I feel sorry for you. I didn't respond. I just filed it with everything else in a folder I later renamed Proof That Truth Wins. That winter, I closed the final file, archived the case, and sat back in my office chair for a long time. It wasn't about the $27,200. It wasn't even about her betrayal. It was about finally choosing to protect myself, about standing up to the kind of person who thinks silence means weakness, and about proving that no matter how carefully someone builds a lie, the truth always leaves a paper trail. By the time Elena's final payment cleared, I should have felt finished. I should have felt victorious, or at least done. Instead, I felt numb. There was no celebration, no toast, no long exhale, just a screen saying transfer confirmed, $27,200 received. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like accounting. And I knew deep down if this could happen to me, it was probably happening to thousands of people who didn't know where to start. People who didn't keep meticulous records, who didn't have a lawyer like James, who didn't get lucky with cached wedding websites and screenshots of Venmo brunches. What about them? What about the people still paying for someone else's lies? That thought became a fire I couldn't put out. So I started asking questions. At first it was small, just a few Google searches. How many ex-spouses commit alimony fraud? Do family courts verify remarriage? Is failure to report a marriage criminal or civil? The answers weren't encouraging. Turns out, unless someone brings evidence to the court, family law departments don't monitor anything. It's an honor system, and the dishonorable thrive in it. The only oversight is you, the payer, the one person least likely to know what's happening in your ex's new life. Unless you snoop, unless you dig, unless you catch them. That realization made my stomach turn, because the court system that forced me to pay every dollar on time with legal threats had zero mechanisms to stop her from taking money illegally. I thought about that. Then I decided to do something about it. It started with a letter. I wrote a detailed account of my case, no fluff, no bitterness, just facts. I addressed it to the Minnesota State Bar, the Department of Human Services, and the Family Court Administration. I told them exactly how it happened, how the law was clear, but the enforcement was non-existent. How people like me, people who follow the rules, get punished, while those who hide behind gaps in reporting keep collecting. Then I sent the same letter to my state representative. Didn't expect to hear anything back, but I did. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from a legislative aide named Erin. She said my letter had been forwarded to the Judiciary Committee chair, and they were looking into constituent experiences around family law enforcement gaps. In other words, they were listening. She asked if I'd be willing to come in and meet. I said yes before she finished the sentence. The meeting was small, just me, Erin, and a legislative analyst named Paul. We sat in a quiet conference room in the Capitol Annex sipping lukewarm coffee and flipping through the file I brought with me. I walked them through it all. The divorce, the payments, the discovery of the remarriage, the screenshots, the hearing, the appeal, the blog post smear campaign, the final repayment. Paul took notes furiously. When I was done, he looked up. "Have you considered turning this into a formal complaint?" I shook my head. Not for me, but maybe it should be mandatory. Maybe the court should require both parties to submit annual affidavits confirming status, marriage, employment address. Something. He nodded. Like a recertification. Exactly. The burden shouldn't be on the person paying to discover fraud. Erin smiled. That's good. Would you be willing to share this in writing? I opened my folder. Already done. She blinked. Seriously, I'm an engineer, I said. Documentation is survival. 2 months later, I was invited to testify at a Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on family law reform. It wasn't a trial. It wasn't televised. Just a long table, a few state senators, and a stack of case summaries, mine on top. I read my statement calmly. I didn't name Elena. I didn't need to, because the issue wasn't her. It was the system that let her do what she did. When I finished, one of the senators, a woman probably in her late 50s, leaned forward and asked, if there had been a process in place, something automatic, do you think you would have been spared this? I nodded. Absolutely. If there had been a check-in, a form, even just a reminder, I think she would have stopped. She made a note, then said, "Thank you, Mr. Morris. Most people don't take the time to help fix the system that failed them." I didn't say anything. I just nodded again, because it wasn't about fixing the system for me. It was about the next guy, the one with less evidence. The one who doesn't see the wedding photos, the one who pays, and pays and never finds out. After the hearing, things started moving. A draft bill was proposed, the Family Support Verification and Accountability Act. It would require annual verification from alimony recipients. Automatic termination procedures upon remarriage, confirmed by cross-reference marriage databases. Penalties for recipients who fail to report a qualifying status change. A publicly accessible registry of known enforcement gaps and fraud outcomes, names redacted. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it had my fingerprints all over it. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something I hadn't in years purpose. Not just as an ex-husband, not just as a taxpayer, as a man who'd been wronged and did something about it. The press got wind of it after the bill passed subcommittee. A local station called, then a podcast, then a national column. I kept it simple. I'm not bitter, I told them. I'm just done being quiet. My inbox filled up with messages from other men and a few women who had been through the same thing. One guy wrote, I paid alimony to my ex for 4 years after she remarried in Vegas. Didn't find out until my daughter slipped up at Thanksgiving. Never got $1 back. Another woman shared my husband pays $2,000 a month to his ex who just moved in with her fiancé. She won't marry him because she knows she'll lose the money. She admitted it, but the law allows it because they're not legally married. Over and over, I read the same theme. The law assumes honesty, but alimony assumes nothing. And that's the problem. So I kept writing, kept submitting, kept showing up because I didn't just want my money back. I wanted my dignity back. And now the system was listening. A few months after the bill passed its first reading, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the Minnesota Judicial Accountability Office. Inside was a certificate of recognition, a simple document, plain black text in honor of Mr. Daniel Morris, whose initiative, record-keeping, and persistence directly contributed to improved transparency and accountability in family law enforcement. I didn't frame it. I tucked it in the same folder where I'd once stored every receipt from Elena. The folder now had a new label, Resolved, and that finally felt like justice. Not revenge, not punishment, just truth delivered through channels that once failed me. I let the law do what my conscience never could, and for once it didn't disappoint. For a while after the judgment, it was quiet. No more certified letters, no more refund installments, no more blog posts, just a long stretch of silence that felt almost peaceful. Then came the message from an old college friend of mine, Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years. Hey, she wrote, not sure if you've seen Elena's new podcast episode, but it's about you. Thought you should know. A podcast. I opened the link. There she was, Elena Callahan, sitting cross-legged on a woven rug, soft lighting, behind her speaking into a microphone about surviving toxic exes and setting boundaries after legal trauma. The episode title, When the Courtroom Becomes a Battleground for Control. I listened for 40 minutes. My name was never used, but every reference, every detail, every story she crafted was unmistakably about us. She painted herself as the emotionally bruised survivor, said she was dragged through months of legal weaponization by a man obsessed with winning instead of moving on. Said she'd only kept receiving alimony out of financial trauma response and confusion. She used phrases like systems of oppression within marriage and navigating male-dominated courtroom dynamics. She called it a case study in post-divorce emotional abuse, and people listened. The comments flooded in. You're so brave for speaking your truth, sending healing energy your way. I hope you're safe now. Men like that never really let go. And just like that, she flipped the story. She couldn't win in court, so she moved the battlefield to one without judges the internet. I was furious, but more than that, I was stunned. She wasn't just rewriting history, she was monetizing it. Her coaching site now offered a $199 online course called Heal Through Harm, Reclaiming Your Power After Legal Re-Traumatization. Her face, her voice, her brand, all built on the lie that she had been the victim. I called James, told him everything. She's using the case to build an audience, I said. She's slandering me without saying my name. He sighed. It's disgusting. But technically, it's protected speech unless she identifies you directly or says something provably false. Everything she says is false. Yes, he said, but proving it's about you to a court, that's the hard part. I was trapped. If I sued, I'd look like the very controlling man she claimed I was. If I stayed silent, she kept spinning the story. So I made a decision. I wouldn't fight her narrative with mine. I'd drown it with facts. I built a website. Nothing fancy. Black text, white background, titled The Full Timeline, What Really Happened. I uploaded redacted documents, our divorce decree, the court judgment, her repayment confirmation. I posted a clear, calm explanation of how the payments continued after her remarriage with dates, sources, screenshots, and statute links. No rants, no accusations, just evidence. I didn't name her, I didn't promote the site, but I made it searchable. And slowly, it started surfacing. People looking up Elena Callahan Coach found it. Her podcast bio link led some there by accident. A few comment sections started posting it. Then came the emails. From her followers, from women, from people who said I wanted to believe her. But I found your page, and I'm sorry. A few even offered to share their stories, said they'd been through the same. One woman in Oregon told me she'd paid her ex $900 a month for 2 years until she found out he'd secretly remarried in Mexico. The court never knew. She never got a refund. She ended the message with, "Thank you for standing up. For all of us." That one stuck with me, because this wasn't just about Elena anymore. This was about truth, and how fragile it is when the loudest voice is the only one people hear. I never wanted to be loud, but I wasn't going to be silent either, especially not when silence is what let her steal from me in the first place. A few weeks after launching the site, I got an unexpected notification, a DM from Elena's husband, Jeremy. His message was short. "Look, man, I didn't know about the payments. Not at first. I found out later. She told me it was all legal, that you knew. I didn't sign up for this drama, just wanted you to know." I stared at the screen. Was it a trap, a setup? But then he sent a follow-up, "I'm out. We split last month. She moved to Austin." I didn't reply. What could I say? He was just another version of me with better timing. Still, the message landed like a bookend. Her audience would move on. Her story would change. Her podcasts would continue. But her credibility, it would always live in the shadow of a very real judgment filed in a very real courthouse with very real dates, dollar signs, and her name written in ink. I didn't need to convince anyone of anything. I just needed to keep the record straight. And I did. The best part, after all of that, the lies, the appeal, the podcast, the drama, her traffic dropped. Her coaching program stalled. Her podcast episodes went from thousands of views to dozens. Turns out, people like a redemption story, but they like receipts even more. And I had all of them. For a while after the dust settled, I didn't know what to do with myself. It's strange, you spend months fighting for something, building your case, defending your name, chasing justice, and then suddenly it's all over. No more court dates, no more lawyer calls, no more surprise certified mail. Just quiet. Too quiet. My weekends stretched out in front of me like blank pages I wasn't sure how to fill. I didn't realize how much of my life had been consumed by that case and the weight I'd been carrying even before I found out about her remarriage. It was more than financial theft. It was years of second-guessing my instincts, questioning my worth, letting someone chip away at my dignity in the name of keeping the peace. The money came back, yes, but time doesn't refund. Self-respect doesn't grow back overnight. Still, something had shifted. I found myself sleeping better. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. I unsubscribed from every email alert with her name on it, blocked the podcast, cleared the last of her photos from my cloud storage, not out of spite, out of necessity. And in that clearing, something new began. I started running again. Nothing fancy, just a few miles after work. Headphones and sneakers pounding pavement, mind blissfully blank. At first, I told myself it was just to stay in shape, but after a few weeks, I realized it was more than that. Running gave me a rhythm. I'd lost something predictable, something I could control. Each step was mine. Unshared, unbilled, and it didn't take long before those runs turned into conversations. One evening, as I stretched on the park trail bench, someone asked, "You training for anything?" She had a runner's build, lean, confident eyes that looked directly at you instead of through you. "I'm just out running some bad memories," I joked. She smiled. "Good cardio." Her name was Rachel. She was a physical therapist, divorced for 2 years, had a 9-year-old son, and a coffee addiction that rivaled mine. We started running together, then grabbing smoothies, then Saturday brunch. It was different this time. No lightning bolts, no drama, no Instagram-worthy love story, just slow, patient steps. And for a man who'd been burned by whirlwind romance, slow felt like salvation. One night, about 2 months in, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" I paused, then said, "I'm not afraid of marriage. I'm afraid of giving too much away too early." She nodded. Fair. Then she said something I still think about. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about letting the right people stay in. And for the first time since Elena, I didn't feel defensive. I felt ready. Outside of dating, I also found myself reconnecting with people I'd pulled away from during the legal saga. Coworkers I used to grab beers with. Family I hadn't visited in over a year. Even my younger brother Dave, who I'd barely spoken to during the divorce. We met up for lunch one Saturday. Just burgers and bad coffee at a place we used to hit in college. "I heard you finally won," he said mid-bite. "Yeah," he nodded. "Told you she was a con." I smiled. "Yeah, well, love's blind, but spreadsheets aren't." He laughed, then got quiet. "I'm proud of you, man. Not just for winning, for staying calm through all of it." That meant more than I expected. Because no one sees what it takes to stay composed when you're being lied about online, misrepresented in public, and treated like an ATM by someone who once claimed to love you. No one but those who've done it too. Work improved too. I was promoted to lead systems analyst and started mentoring some of the junior engineers, mostly guys in their 20s, still figuring out how to balance ambition with boundaries. One of them, Josh, came to me with a personal issue one day. "My ex is threatening to take me to court," he said. "She says she deserves lifestyle support." But we were never married. I listened, then asked, "Do you have everything in writing?" "Should I, Josh?" I said, "Always keep records. Even when you think you won't need them." He nodded slowly. "Thanks, man. You've been through some stuff, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "And I survived. You will too." Later that year, something unexpected happened. I was invited to speak at a small community legal workshop for men navigating divorce and custody issues. A friend of mine had seen my website, the one I built to document Elena's fraud, and told the organizer, "You need this guy." I hesitated at first. What did I know about public speaking? But I showed up, and the room was full. Men in every stage of unraveling, some angry, some numb, some just confused. I didn't preach. I didn't vent. I told them what I wish someone had told me. Trust your instincts. Keep your paperwork. Don't let guilt make decisions for you. And never confuse silence for peace. It's just delayed damage. They asked questions. They nodded. Some even cried. And I realized then, the story that once humiliated me, it had become someone else's flashlight. Eventually, I updated the website one last time. I added a new section at the bottom, What I Learned, and in it, I wrote, "Always keep digital and physical records. Never assume the system is watching for fraud. You are the system. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. You are not paranoid if you're right. And most of all, dignity costs more than alimony. Guard it fiercely." I signed it Daniel E. Morris, former husband, forever survivor. I didn't post about it, didn't share it on social media. I just left it there for the next person stumbling through the mess, because I knew they were coming. And I wanted them to know, yes, this happens. No, you're not crazy. And yes, you will heal. Eventually the fire stops burning. Eventually the guilt stops whispering. Eventually the weight lifts and you breathe different. Not because they changed, but because you did. Months passed. Elena faded from my day-to-day life like background noise that had finally been turned off. No more podcast mentions. No more legal letters. No more questions from mutual friends trying to read between her poetic lies and my silence. She had moved to Austin, changed her last name, started calling herself an emotional resilience strategist, whatever that meant. Her audience shrank. Her workshops got canceled. Her course site went down for maintenance and never came back. I didn't celebrate. Because justice doesn't always feel like a victory lap. Sometimes it feels like walking away from a wreck you didn't cause, but still had to crawl out of. But make no mistake, this was justice. Not just because she paid back what she stole. Not just because the court acknowledged the fraud. But because I took something designed to break me and built something better. And people noticed. One morning in early spring, I got an email from a paralegal named Margot, who worked with a legal aid nonprofit in Colorado. She had found my timeline website through a Reddit thread and read every word. "We help men and women who can't afford representation but are going through financial abuse post-divorce. Would you be willing to do a virtual Q&A with some of our clients? Nothing fancy. Just tell your story." I said yes. We scheduled a Zoom call on a Tuesday night. 7 participants, all muted at first. Some looked nervous, others angry. One man, probably in his 60s, didn't turn his camera on at all. I told them everything. How I missed the signs, how I second-guessed myself, how the law wasn't designed to catch people like Elena, only to punish those too exhausted to speak up. I told them to keep everything. I told them to get comfortable with documentation even when it made them feel paranoid. And when I finished, the man with the blank screen unmuted his mic. "You gave me the courage to stop blaming myself," he said. "She made me feel like a monster. You reminded me I'm just a man who got lied to." That moment meant more to me than the court order ever did, because dignity isn't restored by verdicts. It's restored when someone finally looks at you and says, "I believe you." In the months that followed, I was invited to write an op-ed for a regional newspaper, then a legal blog. Then a podcast, not the self-help kind Elena used, but a real investigative journalism show. They titled the episode "The Divorce That Didn't End Until He Said Enough." They asked how I'd define justice now after everything. My answer surprised even me. Justice is when the truth no longer needs defending, because that's what had changed. Not just the money, not just my ex, me. I no longer walked into conversations bracing for disbelief. I no longer needed to prove my side. I had the documents, the timestamps, the receipts, and I had peace. Not because she gave it to me, but because I took it back. Jeremy, her ex-husband, reached out again. This time not to explain, just to thank me. Whatever your reasons were for holding her accountable, I'm grateful. She ran the same game on me, just with less paperwork. You saved me thousands. He didn't owe me anything. I didn't want his pity or his praise. But his message confirmed something I'd suspected for a while. People like her don't stop when they're caught. They stop when someone says, "Not this time." Later that year, I took part of the refunded alimony, about $5,000, and started something small. A grant. I called it the Ledger Project. It wasn't flashy, just a basic fund to help people cover legal filing fees for family court motions they couldn't afford, especially cases involving hidden assets, unreported income, or, yes, concealed remarriages. I worked with James to set up a vetting process. Rachel, now my girlfriend, steady and kind, helped design the website. We launched it with zero expectations. Within 48 hours, I got our first application. A single mom in Nevada. Her ex-husband had remarried in secret and was still demanding spousal support because she earned more. She found his wedding photos on his new wife's Pinterest board. I read her message twice, then approved her application. The $300 we gave her paid for the filing fee. 2 months later, she won and sent me a handwritten note. I didn't just get my money back. I got to look my daughter in the eyes and tell her, "Mom stood up for herself. Thank you for making that possible." That note sits in my desk drawer, not framed, not laminated, just folded, soft at the edges from how many times I've read it. Because that is what justice looks like. Not gavel slams, not press coverage, but one person tired, broke afraid standing up because someone else stood first. One night, Rachel and I hosted a small backyard cookout. Nothing fancy. Just grilled chicken music laughter, a few neighbors and friends. At some point, Jeremy, my younger brother, leaned over and asked, "If you could go back, would you still marry her?" I didn't flinch. "Yeah," I said, "because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here. Wouldn't have learned what I'm capable of. Wouldn't have built any of this." He nodded. "What about all the pain?" "I kept the receipts," I said, "but I didn't keep the weight." And that was true. I'd built a life out of the wreckage. I'd turned false promises into real action, and I'd found a version of myself I actually respected, one who didn't live to prove his value to someone else, but who knew it quietly, fiercely, and without apology. Looking back, the thing that surprises me most isn't what she did. It's what I allowed. Not because I was weak, not because I was stupid, but because I believed that being good meant being silent, that being generous meant being taken advantage of. That doing the right thing included doing it for people who'd stopped deserving it a long time ago. For over a year, I let someone lie to me with a straight face. And for over a year, I paid for that lie. Literally. What changed wasn't her behavior. It was mine. The moment I stopped assuming good intentions. The moment I trusted the facts over the familiarity. The moment I opened a spreadsheet instead of just my heart. That's when I got my power back. So here's what I learned. Don't let guilt become your compass. Don't confuse silence for peace or compromise for character. If someone is hiding, you don't owe them your trust. If they're lying to the court, they've already lied to you. Keep records not because you're paranoid, but because you're smart. The person who documents the truth holds the power to reveal it. Don't yell, don't threaten, don't stoop, just prepare. Paper outlasts manipulation. Time reveals everything. And the truth, it doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs you not to look away. Because in the end, justice doesn't come from anger. It comes from discipline, from calm, from knowing who you are even when someone tries to rewrite your story without your consent. I let her do that once. Not again. I'm not bitter. I am just better because I walked out of that courtroom with more than my money. I walked out with something she'll never take from anyone again. The proof. The precedent. The voice that finally said, enough.